In the summer of 1965, the President drastically increased our commitment in Vietnam and presented the Army with perhaps its greatest challenge since World War II. The Army had to expand quickly. Great numbers of men, fully equipped and well supplied, were suddenly needed in South Vietnam. Yet the Army had to be ready for any other emergency that might come up somewhere else in the world. Every member of the Army felt the challenge. This is the story of how that challenge was met and is being met. The Strategic Army Forces, called STRAF for short, are constantly on the alert, ready to go anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. From the STRAF forces came most of the first units to go to Vietnam. STRAF continues to supply reinforcements and replacements. STRAF has a unique problem. It must continue to furnish trained replacements while maintaining the capability of reacting to other requirements. STRAF is continually providing its best people, best in both leadership and in technical skills. Supplying replacements for Vietnam doesn't only mean individuals. It also means entire units, or the officers, NCOs, and teaching staffs for new units and training centers. For STRAF, this means training, training, and more training to remain at its high state of readiness. To meet this double demand, sending the needed troops to Vietnam and keeping STRAF up to strength, more than 1,000 different units have been activated so far. As the buildup got moving, the availability of trained manpower became the main problem area. And so, even though replacement troops for Vietnam stayed a top priority, running a close second was the expansion of our training facilities. 2 years ago, we could train a lot of men, but the number has nearly doubled. And we've doubled it with no sacrifice of quality. Our training program and the men, it turns out, have never been better. This is a tribute to the people who give the training and to the people who get it. Today's young soldier has a healthy attitude toward tough training. The instructors have first-hand experience, skill, and imagination. And the trainees know how this works for them. They benefit from their instructors' Vietnam combat experience and from that rare talent that makes a man a top-notch drill instructor. These instructors, 44,000 of them, are the Army's best. Combat-skilled professionals dedicated to their work. Because of these skills, this determination and devotion, the trainees they teach will be totally ready to face the enemy when the time comes. Every man who's assigned to Vietnam gets special training to equip him to serve there. New lessons that our soldiers have learned in Vietnam have been added to the training at all levels: basic combat training, advanced individual training, and unit training. At 3 training centers, Fort Gordon, Fort Polk, and Fort Jackson, infantrymen bound for Vietnam get advanced individual training. All 3 of these training centers have a climate and terrain very similar to Vietnam. The 9-week training session includes one continuous 5-day field exercise that's hard to tell from a real Vietnam situation. You never know who you'll meet in the jungle. Officers and NCOs get the special jungle warfare training that will make them ready for anybody or anything. Modern warfare is a complex business. Specialized techniques call for new areas of teaching and longer training periods. The Army needed many types of units, such as aviation companies, which did not exist in sufficient quantity. The needed companies were activated, trained, and sent to Viet Nam. Pilots are in constant demand. We've tripled our output of helicopter pilots and doubled that of other pilots. The flight training program is so efficient that when a pilot finishes, he's fully qualified to go right into combat. Training in helicopter maintenance is expanding rapidly. We're training more people in the Vietnamese language than in any other language in any other war. We've set up special courses of instruction for officers and senior NCOs who are being assigned as advisors to Vietnamese Army units. Civil affairs is taught at Fort Gordon. Military assistance at Fort Bragg. Modern warfare calls for highly trained people in all areas, from automatic data processors to boat handlers and stevedores. The Army needs them all and trains them all. The United States Army now lists over 900 occupational specialties. The buildup has called for great numbers of additional officers, too. And so the Army expanded the officer candidate schools it had and added new ones. Now, our OCS program is turning out nearly twice as many new officers as it did 2 years ago. And the program is still expanding. By the end of this year, the Army expects the output of new officers to be over 5 times what it was last year. Field commanders are enthusiastic about the expanded training program. General Westmoreland puts it this way.
It is evident everywhere I go in Vietnam that the American fighting man of this war is the best trained soldier we have ever put into the field. I say this not only because he outfights the enemy or because he is tougher and stronger and smarter. He is all of these things. But today's American soldier is something more. He is a thoughtful man, discipline and restraint of fire as well as in its accuracy. He can fight with ferocity and skill when the Viet Cong will fight. But he will resist provocation and make sure of his target before he shoots. He can enter a village from which he has been fired upon, destroy or rout the Viet Cong, and then show compassion for the families left behind. Never before have we asked so much of our soldiers, and it is a credit to our training base in the United States that he, the American soldier, meets these new demands. I congratulate and thank the officers and men of the Continental Army Command, the training centers and the service schools, the drill sergeants, the military instructors, unit commanders, and the planners may all be proud of their products. They have the unqualified admiration of this command.
No matter how many men we commit to Southeast Asia, the Army must still be ready for any crisis that might flare up somewhere else in the world. To keep us ready, the Army National Guard and the U.S. Army Reserve have organized the Selected Reserve Forces. They consist of 3 divisions, 6 brigades, and support units. A total authorized strength of about 150,000 men. With a high priority for school space and equipment, the Selected Reserve Forces are prepared. in our entire history, no other force not on active duty has ever been in as high a state of training readiness. Transport and supply is what the Army calls logistics. And logistically speaking, the rapid buildup has been massive. We've needed new equipment, weapons, ammunition, and missiles in greater and greater numbers, billions of dollars worth a year. The amount has just about doubled in the last 2 years. The logistical job isn't just big, it's immense. Hundreds of thousands of individual items have to be procured, packaged, transported, and delivered some 8,000 miles and be where they're needed, when they're needed. Think your local shopping center does a big business? Well, last year, our logistical support forces delivered to their customers in Viet Nam, among other things, 77 million gallons of gasoline. 70 million gallons of helicopter fuel. 60 million packaged combat meals for troops. 60,000 car and truck batteries. 71,000 tires. And 750 million rounds of small arms ammunition. The United States isn't in Vietnam just to fight. Together with other free world forces, we are there to help the Vietnamese people stand up to an armed communist attack, to seek out the enemy and defeat him. But we're also there to help the South Vietnamese people build their nation through a revolutionary development program. To achieve this twofold mission, the Army has sent a number of major units to South Vietnam. The 173rd Airborne Brigade, the Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division, the 1st Cavalry Division, the 1st Infantry Division, the 25th Infantry Division, the 4th Infantry Division, the 196th Light Infantry Brigade, the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, the 9th Infantry Division, and the 199th Light Infantry Brigade. Whether they're in a combat or a support unit, we can be proud of our soldiers. They show fighting spirit and high morale. They're professionals. They've adapted to a strange, harsh environment and are beating the communists at their own game. No one could ask for more. The war in Vietnam is a unique war, and it's brought about many new developments. Take the helicopter. It's become more than just a workhorse. It's become the symbol of the Vietnam War. Few people realize the versatility of the helicopter. It quickly proved itself in actual combat, and there's nothing like it for mobility in the jungle. This is a war of constant movement. In the jungles, the delta, the highlands, the central plain, and the reed-covered marshes, the chopper is now the indispensable weapon. Helicopters can attack war zones we could never penetrate before. The Viet Cong had areas they thought were unassailable. Now, they find that instead of being safe in those places, they're cornered in them. They're forced to fight and suffer heavy casualties. The Army can fly artillery pieces to remote spots, wherever they can be used to best advantage. This airlifting artillery, as well as infantry, is warfare's latest, most striking evolutionary development. The helicopter's own armament is seeing constant improvement. This is the Huey Cobra, brand new, now going into service. packing a lot of firepower. Aircraft have become actual organic equipment of the ground forces. We're using more aircraft and in more different ways than in any other war. Besides the more usual functions, we now have airborne command control. A rope lowering maneuver called rappelling. Trooper ladders. Armed escorts for air mobile operations. And direct fire support. The air ambulance is the backbone of the medical service's life-saving effort. Pilots and crews man their helicopters day and night, flying into hostile areas, risking their lives to save the lives of others. The helicopter is in constant use to evacuate the wounded, and this is showing results. The overall mortality rate among our combat casualties is the lowest ever achieved by the United States Army. Air rescue isn't limited to people. This strange-looking bird, the flying crane, has rescued millions of dollars worth of disabled aircraft and other equipment. The 1st Cavalry Division has pioneered in a technique of operations called air mobility. The 1st Cav has been so successful with these tactics that other units have followed their lead. Air mobile operations are now conducted by all U.S. and Allied units throughout Vietnam. At first, we weren't using many tanks and other tracked combat vehicles in Vietnam. But now, mechanized forces are keeping up with the overall buildup of U.S. and Allied troops. The nature of this war has created new communications problems. Combat operations are fluid and mobile. The areas of operation are large, and ground relay stations are favorite targets of the Viet Cong. So we've eliminated the need for ground relay stations. We can now communicate from one end of South Vietnam to the other through a principle called tropospheric scatter. Troposcatter stations throughout the country provide a reliable communications network. Also, flying radio relay stations are widely used. Combat operations in Vietnam move quickly. This calls for rapid intelligence reporting. The terrain is difficult. The weather is unpredictable. There's a language problem, and the enemy is unlike any we've ever faced. All this makes reliable information hard to come by. But we do have Mohawks, whose radar can spot moving vehicles and whose infrared detectors can pick up heat sources such as motors and fires. For still more information, long-range patrols infiltrate enemy territory and radio information back. At interrogation centers, we question Viet Cong prisoners and sift, compare, and evaluate the information. Captured documents, weapons, and equipment are another good source of information. Research and development is meeting our new requirements. Detection devices such as ground surveillance radar protect against surprise attack. Air crewmen exposed to sniper fire now have a lightweight armored vest. Here's something to help a soldier locate a hidden enemy in the jungle, the Chemical Sniffer. The nickname MUST comes from the initials of something called Medical Unit Self-Contained Transportable. It comes packed in just 3 containers. 1/3 of it expands into a fully modern operating room. The second box holds an inflatable ward for 20 combat casualties. And the 3rd unit provides electricity, air for inflation, and air conditioning. It can be used anywhere in the world, in any temperature or climate. The Army has developed a nylon membrane, a dust-free, all-weather ground surfacing. It allows for quick building of heliports, forward area supply airfields, and open storage areas. With the rapid expansion of our forces in Vietnam, the need for deep water ports became urgent. Cam Ranh Bay, one of the finest natural harbors in the world, was picked for its ideal location, its deep anchorage, and its wide beach. But it was completely undeveloped. There weren't even any roads. One of the most important elements in developing this port was the ingenious De Long Pier. Each unit is a big barge, which can be towed to wherever it's needed with its own pilings right on board. The piers can be built in almost any size or shape simply by connecting the units. Even while the Cam Ranh Bay port was being built, with the assistance of Navy contractors, the Army put up living quarters, supply facilities, including warehouses, a tank farm for fuel storage, and an ammo dump for the tremendous tonnages of munitions to be handled at the port. Today, Cam Ranh Bay is a major military port. It can handle almost as much cargo as Charleston, South Carolina, and it's still growing. Here and elsewhere in Vietnam, Hawk missiles protect against possible air attack. The normal way to ship repair parts is in bulk, which means they'll have to be sorted later by hand. An important innovation was to ship these parts in pre-sorted containers and trailers with bins. What we have, in effect, are self-contained warehouses and portable supply rooms. There's much less damage en route, and they're practically weatherproof. Another tremendous job is servicing complex Army aircraft in underdeveloped areas. And so a Navy ship has been converted and outfitted as a floating Army maintenance center. The Corpus Christi Bay is a relatively secure base of operations that can move to wherever it's needed. It can perform depot-type inspections of aircraft, testing, repair, overhaul, and salvage. It can even make certain replacement parts. The shops, all below deck, are air-conditioned and free of dirt. They also service aircraft communications equipment. The Corpus Christi Bay is an invaluable aid to Army aviation in Vietnam. The Army is skilled in warfare, yes, but the true goal in South Vietnam is peace and security. We're fighting to defeat an enemy that would enslave a people. Everything we do in Vietnam is geared to help the civilian population, to protect them, so that their duly constituted government can function in safety. We know the value of leaflets and loudspeakers in counter-guerrilla warfare, and we have people skilled in psychological operations to counteract the Viet Cong. As a result, in 1966, Viet Cong soldiers were deserting at nearly 3 times the rate of the year before. Our special forces have the knack of working well with villagers in remote areas, so we've increased our special forces units in Vietnam. We maintain close contact not only with the regular Vietnamese Army, but with the militia too. We've found this to be the best way to help the Vietnamese government provide security for its people. When that security has been gained, the war will be won. And so much of the goal is to improve the lot of the Vietnamese villager. Our advisory people have no monopoly on this work. The combat units pitch in too and help with building and repairing schools. Building roads and bridges, and cleaning up and rehabilitating public facilities. Seeing to a dependable supply of good drinking water, drilling new wells where they're needed, bringing electric power to the rural areas, providing medical and dental services, distributing food and clothing, and working up new food sources by helping at everything from stocking fish ponds to building new hog sheds. We're teaching the English language and caring for the thousands of refugees fleeing the Viet Cong. The American soldier has always felt compassion for the innocent sufferer. Something inside him gives him no choice but to help, with a spontaneous generosity that's become known the world over. As able as he is in combat, the American soldier may be serving an even greater role as goodwill ambassador. And this doesn't apply just to Vietnam, for the Army's responsibility is worldwide. In 48 countries around the world, the Army is involved in programs to help free nations defend themselves against communist aggression and to create a better life. Add to that its assistance in the air defense of the North American continent and keeping combat-ready forces set to go anywhere on a moment's notice to meet military emergencies, and you have some idea of the Army's overall responsibilities. The past year has been one of progress and accomplishment. The challenges have been great, but no challenge has gone unanswered for lack of effort. We have activated forces and sent them where they're needed. We've increased our manpower and our training program. And logistically, we've kept up with it all. Once again, the American serviceman is the defender and the very symbol of his country. He's bringing credit to himself and to our nation. He's brought comfort to his allies and terror to his enemy. The battle is still the payoff, and on the battleground in Vietnam, the American fighting man has again been found ready and able.